Hey stitchers, your girl Kris here, and welcome to my sewing space Unsewcial. So for today's video, I'm here to share with you a pattern review of McCalls 7974. So if this is something that you might be interested in, please keep on watching. Y'all, so this is my first completed make of 2024. I did cut and prep my pattern pieces at the end of 2023 and thought that I would have gotten it completed by December 31st. Meh! I did not. I did not start sewing this pattern, I think, until around the 3rd or 4th of January, if I'm not mistaken. It was very early in the new year that I actually started constructing this pattern. And it did take me a little longer than usual to sew her up, but I have had it completed for about a week or two. And I think you in fact spotted it on my dress form on a couple videos back. But I finally have gotten her photographed and I'm finally here to do my full pattern review. So while I'm on the topic of my dress form here, this is Know Me 2016, the Butte Jadot pattern. And you guys, I cannot wait to share this baby with you in a future video. So if you're interested in what's on my dress form, please make sure that you have your notification bell turned on right here so you do not miss when I upload that video. Anywho, about this dress pattern. So this is the pattern that I used. This is McCalls 7974, and she is a pretty old pattern, all things considering. This one is circa 2019, and I have in fact made her one time before. I'm going to look through and see if I can find any footage at all to share with you my first version of McCalls 7974, which I had made in a teal crepe fabric. And I in fact had a photo shoot with my friend Karandre of VIP Media Montserrat back in, I think, 2019 or 2020, featuring my first version of this pattern. There is also a full pattern review over on my blog for my first iteration of this pattern. So for that version, I had made View D, which is this one right here. It is the maxi length shirt dress version with the collar. Now for this view, I have opted for view A this time about. I really loved the sleeve detail on view A, and I wanted to make a fun and flirty and cute shirt dress pattern, and this is the one that came to mind. So I had this fabric that I ordered from Mood Fabrics. This cow print fabric was a hit last year. Like, I saw it popping up a couple times on my Instagram feed and decided that I had to have one. So I do have a thing about black and white. I love black and white. Now, I am a lawyer, so black and white fits nicely into my work wardrobe. And when you have fun and funky prints such as this, then your girl's personality can show even on the days that I have to go to court. So I can wear the court appropriate colors, black and white, but in a nice funky print such as this one. So I ordered this fabric, as I said, from Mood Fabrics. This is a cotton sateen substrate, and I think I ordered 3 yards. Now, for my size, which is blended, by the way, I think I started with a size 16 at the neckline and the shoulders. I blended out to a size 18 at the bust, and then out to a size 20 at the waistline. So I really like that this pattern comes nested. There are a couple patterns, indie patterns, that do not come nested. And I think that's one of the pluses for these big 5 patterns. You can get nested sizing in quite a big size range. I want to say, relatively speaking, you get a couple sizes that you can blend. So for this pattern envelope, for example, there are 2 size envelopes. The first size range is from a 6 to a 14, and the second size range is a 14 to a 22. Now, the big 5 patterns now come with even bigger size ranges. I think they're like maybe 4 different envelopes for some of the patterns because they now accommodate some plus sizing. But this pattern was released in 2019 when they only had the 2 different size bands. So like I said, I made a 16 and 18 out to a 20 in this pattern. I did have to make a couple fit adjustments as per usual. So along with my grading, I did do a 1/2 inch sloping shoulder adjustment because you guys, I have terrible posture. and I know I'm not the only one. So a sloping shoulder adjustment really just helps the shoulder line to lay much better on my body, and it also simultaneously lowers the arm side so that it's not squeezing up under my armpits. I also made a 1/4 inch sway back adjustment. Now this is the adjustment that I spoke about in my video that I published, I think, on Wednesday. So by the time you see this video, it should be, I think, on Sunday. And I did publish a tutorial on the previous Wednesday talking about the sway back adjustment and demonstrating how to go about performing it. So if this is an adjustment that you might need, then be sure to go ahead and check out that video. Now I also did shorten the entire bodice of this pattern by 1/2 inch. Now on my first version, I didn't shorten the pattern, and upon reviewing the photographs and the videos and writing my first blog about 7974, I think I had convinced myself that I needed to shorten the pattern by the 1/2 inch. So I did go ahead and do it on this version, and I'm much happier with the placement of the waistline on this iteration. Now, what other adjustments did I make? Oh, I did do a 1/2 inch full bust adjustment. Now this pattern is drafted for a B cup, as most of the big 5 patterns are, unless of course you get an envelope that specifically says that it includes cup sizes. This one does not. So I did have to go in and do a 1/2 inch full bust adjustment on this pattern to accommodate my girls. Now, because this is an empire line pattern, the way I did my full bust adjustment is a little different to the usual full bust adjustment technique that you might have seen elsewhere. And if anybody out there is interested in seeing a how-to on performing a full bust adjustment on this type of empire line bodice, be sure to leave me a comment down below so that I can slot it in to one of my tutorial videos. Now, when I made this pattern, I had in mind that I wanted to add my own little unique touch to it. And to do it, I decided that I wanted to add a lace insert into the skirt of my pattern. You guys, that was both a good and a bad thing. So let me tell you about the bad thing first. I know it's typical to talk about the good first and then the bad, but on this occasion, I'm going to tell you guys the bad first, and then we can get into the good. So the downside to the lace insert in this pattern is that it took me ages. So I had to trace out my pattern pieces, which I usually do anyway. But the skirt of this pattern actually has panels. So there's a center front portion, then there's a side front for both the left and the right side, and then there's a center back portion, and then left and right side back pieces. So you guys, there were lots of pieces for me to trace out. And then I had to hack my pattern pieces so that I could accommodate my lace insert. Now to do that, I had to cut my pattern pieces apart at 3 different levels. So I ended up with my first piece, which is going to be in the cotton sateen. Then my second piece was for my lace insert. And then my third piece was for the remainder of my skirt. Now, it took me so long just to hack this pattern. When you hack a pattern and you add seam lines, I beg your pardon, to any pattern piece, you have to go back in and add seam allowance. So you guys, I had to add seam allowance to my first skirt tier. Then I had to add seam allowances on both sides of my second tier. And then for my third tier, I had to add the seam allowance to the upper portion of the cut pattern piece. Now, in addition to that, I had to cut out all of my fabric pieces using these pattern pieces. So again, that took me quite a while to cut out. Now, lace can be quite shifty, so I did have to cut them on a single layer, which added even more time to the process. But you guys, I think at the end of the day, it was well worth it. Now, when I was constructing my skirt piece, I did it by panels first. So I did my entire front panel. So I cut out my fabric piece for tier 1, then my lace piece for tier 2, and then my fabric piece for tier 3. Then I stitched tier 1 to tier 2, tier 2 to tier 3. Then I had to serge and press all of my seams. I did think I forgot to tell you that the front placket for the skirt piece of this pattern is grown on. So it just folds back when you construct this pattern, how it ought to be constructed. But because I wanted to do the same thing to my placket piece, I did decide to separate the placket piece from my front skirt piece, which added even more work, you guys, to this skirt, so that I could then go and create the tiers, so that when I folded back my the placket, then it would have the same detail as my front skirt piece. I didn't want it to show through, obviously, through my lace. Now, talking about showing through my lace, once I had done each of my panels, I did go in and serge the longer edges of my skirt pieces, where you would join your center front piece to your side front piece, for example. You guys, big mistake. I don't know why it didn't occur to me whilst I was doing it, but once I had finished and started putting my pieces together, then I realized I had made a big boo-boo. So because this fabric is in black and white, I did opt to go for white serger thread. Why, you guys? At the end of the day, I'm thinking to myself, what the hell were you thinking about? So I used white serger thread, and somehow, I don't know, I think I had like a lapse in judgment or something. I ended up serging my lace pieces with my white serger thread. So my serger thread ran from the top of my skirt straight down to the hemline, and obviously it had to go through my lace pieces. So by the time I got to my ironing board to press my lace pieces open, I was like, wait, here you can see all of this white serger thread peeking through my lace. Like, duh, Kris. Like, I don't know how come I missed it. So your girl had to go back in and unpick all of the serger thread on all of my skirt pieces. And if you guys don't know, unpicking serger thread on lace fabric is hell, just because of the nature of the lace fabric. But I did go ahead and do a YouTube short showing you an easy way to unpick serger thread, I beg your pardon. So if that might be of interest to you, if you guys make these kind of mistakes like your girl, and you often find yourself having to unpick your serger thread, then you can go and check out that short where I showed you the easiest way to go ahead and remove your serger thread. Now, once I had unpicked my serger thread, I did change my serger thread to black. So my skirt pieces are all now serged off with black thread, which is what I should have done in the first place, just because of the lace insert in my fabric. Now, I could have probably done French seams, which is probably recommended when working with lace, but because it was just an insert, and because this cotton sateen fabric is just a little bit thick, it's a little bit on the heavier side in my estimation, I didn't want to create too much bulk at all of the seam lines in my skirt. I wanted them to lay as flat as possible, and so I opted to do serging instead of French seams. Now, I did go ahead and also top stitch my lace pieces to the fabric pieces, so that again took me a while. I did use white thread for my top stitching, but once I reviewed it, I think I probably should have used the black thread instead of the white thread. Now, it doesn't look too bad in my estimation. I'm not sure if you can see it from where I'm standing. I hope you can, but I think I would have preferred if I had finished my top stitching with black thread. But after I did all of that unpicking with my serger thread, I really just couldn't be bothered to go in and unpick all of this white top stitching and replace it with black. So I am going to wear this pattern just as it is with my white top stitching. Now, you guys, this skirt has pockets. Now, if you know me, then you know I love pockets in my dresses. Now, that is the upside to sewing my own dresses. I find that ready-to-wear dresses don't include pockets. At least I haven't come across very many that include pocket pieces. And I like to be able to slip in pocket pieces in my skirts whenever possible. Luckily, this pattern does in fact include the pocket pieces, and I'm so happy for my pockets. So other than my pockets and my lace insert, I really do like the sleeve portion of this pattern. Now, as I said, on my first iteration of this dress, I did do the sleeveless version, that's view D with a collar. But I did always like this keyhole tie sleeve situation. But back when I made my first iteration, I wasn't sure if I could handle it, but I've come a long way in my sewing, thank God, and I was able to get it done almost seamlessly on this version. There are a couple little puckers right there at the steepest parts of the curve, but nothing that I think anybody else would notice. If I were to make this pattern again and do this sleeve, I do think I could have benefited from using a narrower bias tape. The pattern envelope does ask you to use a 1/2 inch bias tape, but I do think that if it was a 1/4 inch bias tape, for example, it would have been so much easier and neater to get this curve in. So if I were to make this again, then I would go in on the paper pattern piece and remove some of the seam allowance right here at the keyhole opening, and then use narrower bias tape to make my life just a little bit easier. Now the pattern envelope also requires 13 1/2 inch buttons, but I did not use 13 buttons, I used 11 instead, just because I stopped my buttonholes right above the lace insert. Now your girl was not going to try and put buttonholes in this lace fabric, you guys, and putting a buttonhole in the hem part of my skirt I think would have just been odd, with this big old gap between the button on the main skirt and then the button on the hem portion of my skirt, like tier 3. I just didn't think that was going to be a good idea. Luckily, where my button stops, it doesn't expose anything extra below the buttons, and so I'm quite happy with what I decided to do in terms of my button placement. Now overall, I am in love with this finished dress, you guys. I really like how it came together, and I am super obsessed about this lace insert. So all of the work that went into creating my pattern pieces and then cutting and constructing my skirt pieces, all of that work sort of went out the door once I had seen my finished garment. I was beaming. I really am very proud of this first make of 2024, and I can't wait to push my limits further, going more and more into 2024. Now, I have a habit of hacking patterns anyways, and I want to do a lot more of it this year. I really just like being able to add my own little unique touches to my makes, my garments, using well thought out patterns that other people have invested so much time and energy into creating, and giving me a great blueprint just to add my special little touch. So what do you guys think of my McCalls 7974? Are you as smitten with this pattern as I am? Now, this was a cult favorite, I think, a couple years ago. It was all over Instagram. The hashtag was bursting with ideas and makes for 7974. And even though this pattern came out in 2019, I personally think that this pattern has longevity. I think that this is a pattern that I can sew up again sometime this year, sometime next year, sometime 5 years from now, and it will still be a hit. So let me know what you guys think down below in the comments of this pattern, and let me know if you have in fact made this pattern yourself. I did mention earlier, if you guys want to see any of my fit adjustments, the sloping shoulder adjustment, how I did my FBA, any adjustment at all, make sure you leave a comment down below so that I can work it into my fit series. So that's all I wanted to share with you guys today. Thank you very much for stopping by my channel. If this is the first time that you have joined me, welcome. I'm happy to have you here, and please consider subscribing so you don't miss any of my upcoming videos. If you have been here before, then you are officially my OG, and I'm looking forward to seeing you in my next video. So until then, take care, you guys. Peace.